Chapter 1. The Island World. A scatter of low coral islands lies on an opaque, greenish sea, its surface broken only by sandbanks. Some bare and awash, others holding a few pandanus trees high on their stilted roots. The largest of these islands is Boyoa. Around it spreads the wide lagoon of the Trobriands, threaded with shallow passages where canoes pick their way between the coral. There are no mountains here, no high valleys trailing mist. The land is a single fertile plain, ridged with coral along the coast and matted over with a low, tangled jungle that closes in on either side of every path, so that a walk through the bush runs forever between two green walls. To the south, the world rises and darkens. The Amphilet Islands stand out of the water in steep pyramids and cupolas, the home of a small, grasping people who hold the trade of these waters in their own hands. Beyond them lifts the volcanic cone of Dobu, once the launching place of cannibal and headhunting fleets, still a center of trade and dread, whose language is spoken as a common tongue as far north as the Trobriands themselves. Between these places runs the open sea, seamed with long barrier reefs and treacherous tides that pour through at 5 knots, genuinely dangerous to a small craft under sail. The people who live among these islands are gardeners and master sailors. Their gardens cover a quarter of the land each year, heaped at harvest with yams piled in neat conical shelters, and their seagoing canoes are drawn up high on every beach. The surface of their life is plain enough: the village street, the smoke of the cooking fire, the food displayed for admiring, but the things that truly order this world are nowhere written on its surface. They live in blood, in rank, and in fear. Blood here runs through the mother. A child belongs to the clan and the village of its mother, and rank, kinship, and the inheritance of possessions all descend in the maternal line. The real guardian of a boy is not the man who fathered him, but his mother's brother, the maternal uncle, from whom in time he will inherit. Between a man and his mother's people lies the only true kinship the islanders count. A real identity of substance, binding a boy most closely to his brothers and his sisters, though between brother and sister there falls so rigorous a taboo that he will not joke in her presence, nor look at her, nor hear the smallest allusion to her affairs. The father stands strangely apart. Physiological fatherhood is unknown, and no tie of blood is held to join a father to his child. He is, by the reckoning of kinship, no relation at all. And yet the father is the nearest and most tender friend the child has, the one who worries in its sickness, who carries the infant, who in matters of inheritance gives freely and with pleasure. What the maternal uncle yields only under the compulsion of custom. Above kinship sits rank, 4 totemic clans, each with a bird as its principal totem, cut across every village, so that even within a single house, two clans stand together. Each clan divides into sub-clans, whose ancestresses are said to have emerged at the beginning from a hole in the ground near their home village. And to each sub-clan, a fixed rank attaches. Highest of all is the Tabalu of the Malasi clan, to which belongs To'ulua, the great chief who rules the province of Kiruwina from the village of Omaracana. His power runs on wealth. Through the privilege of many wives, once as many as 40, each drawn from a subject village whose family must fill his storehouses with yams. The chief commands an abundance he uses to pay for everything, even for the services that are owed to him. Wealth is the outward sign and the very substance of power. And the same Malasi clan that holds the highest sub-clan holds also the lowest. The Stingari eaters of Boitalu, despised as unclean for eating bush pig and the forbidden stingery, yet the most skillful carvers and the most dreaded sorcerers on the island. A Tabalu chief takes it as a deep insult to be reminded that these are his kin. Over all of it lies magic, and the dread that magic breeds. The spirits of the dead inspire little fear. They go to Tuma, an island in the northwest, and return once a year for the feast of Milamala to receive their offerings. Troubling the living? Hardly at all. The fear is kept for something nearer. Magic shadows every vital act. The very garden has its magician, ranking next after the chief and the sorcerer, who consecrates the soil and walks each rite in step with each stage of the growing plant. But the magic that is truly feared is the black art of the Bwaga'u, the sorcerer of whom there are one or two in every village. His art, once learned, must first be turned upon his own mother or sister. Only that act makes him a genuine Bwaga'u. He moves at night, attended by owls and nightjars, and thrusts a bundle of charmed herbs through the thatch and into the fire over which his sickened victim lies. The rite called Toginivayu, its fumes carrying the named man toward death. Should a rival's counterspell hold him off, he turns to the last and most fatal rite, the pointing bone, coconut oil boiled in a dense patch of jungle, herbs wrapped round a sharp stingery spine, the deadliest incantation chanted over it, and then the unseen dagger pointed and twisted in the air toward the man it means to kill. And out over the water gather the flying witches, the Mulukwausi, whose chief home is Wawala on the eastern shore, believed to feed upon corpses, and most dangerous of all, to men in peril at sea. So beneath the simple surface of this world, the garden heaped with yams, the canoe drawn up on the sand, lies a society governed wholly by what cannot be seen. Blood is reckoned through women, power through wealth, and life and death through magic. The material is only the skin of things. What truly moves these people and binds them and terrifies them leaves no mark on the plain and the lagoon. To understand these islands at all, the eye must learn to watch for the forces it can never touch. Chapter 2. The Endless Circuit. A long string of red shell discs slides from one pair of hands into another. 3 meters of small flat beads, each one drilled through its center and threaded close against the next, their color running from muddy brown at the ends to a deep, worn carmine, smooth now and faintly greasy from all the hands that have carried it before. Somewhere along the beach a conch shell sounds, one deep note drawn out over the thatch and the canoes and the white line of the reef beyond. With that note, the necklace has a new owner, and the man who has just parted with it waits, because something must come back to him in its place, though he, in turn, will hold that too, only for a season. Nothing on this coast is kept. The red necklaces are called sulava, and they are one of only 2 kinds of thing that move in this great exchange. The other is the mwali, the armshell, a wide white band cut from the broad top of a cone shell, its spiral broken away, and the remaining ring ground and polished until it gleams like bone. These 2 objects, and these 2 alone, pass endlessly along a wide ring of islands scattered to the north and east of the mainland, a chain of communities that closes upon itself in a circuit no eye can see whole. Along that circuit the 2 valuables travel in opposite directions. The necklaces move always one way around the ring. With the turning of the sun, the armshells move always against them. Wherever a sulava meets an mwali, the 2 change hands. A red string given for a white ring. A white ring given for a red string. Every man learns the rule of the compass that governs him. From certain partners he receives only armshells, from others only necklaces, and never both from the same man, for the 2 streams must never cross or double back. An armshell taken with the left hand is passed on to the right. A necklace taken with the right is passed to the left. Multiply that single motion across thousands of men, and 2 unbroken rivers result, one of necklaces flowing one way, one of armshells flowing the other. Forever. Follow any single piece and it never comes to rest. An armshell or a necklace takes between 2 and 10 years to travel the whole ring and return to a coast it has seen before. No man dares hold one for long. To keep a valuable more than a year or 2 is to be called slow, hard, niggardly, and whole districts carry that bad name. The rule is spoken plainly and obeyed without exception. Once in the Kula, always in the Kula. It binds the men, and it binds the objects too. A mere handful of especially fine pieces are set apart as heirlooms. and pass out of the ring entirely. Everything else moves and goes on moving, long after the men who first launched it are dead. Each passing of a valuable is a passing between partners. Two men, once joined in the exchange, are joined for life. A fixed and permanent bond, entered with ceremony and never dissolved. A man of no special standing keeps only a few such partners close to home. A chief numbers them in the hundreds, near and far. Threaded together, these pairs link some thousands of individuals across islands that differ in custom, in speech, even in the look of their people. The partner who lives near is a friend and a relative by marriage. The partner overseas is something more, a host in a land of strangers, an ally, the one guarantee of safety in a district where every outsider feels the breath of foreign sorcery at his back, and no single man among the thousands can stand outside the ring and see its shape. Each knows only his own partners, his own debts, his own few valuables coming and going. The whole vast wheel turns above them all, beyond the sight of any one of them. Strangest of all is what these treasures are for. They are ornaments, and yet they are almost never worn. 9 in 10 of the armshells are too small to fit even the arm of a child. A few of the greatest are so large and so precious, they might be put on once in a decade, by one important man, on one festive day, and never otherwise. The necklaces can be worn, but the finest are too valuable and too cumbersome for any ordinary use. A man who owns several will lend them out for a dance to his children, his friends, even those who serve him, and stand undecorated himself. These things are not possessed in order to be used. Each truly fine one carries its own name and its own history. Who held it? When? In what village? On what occasion it changed hands, so that its appearance in a district stirs the same excitement as a famous jewel. They are like the crown regalia of some far kingdom, ugly to the eye, useless to the hand, and beyond all price, treasured not for any service they perform, but for the renown of having held them, and for the long human memory packed into them. Across open water, none of it could happen without one thing: the canoe. The largest of the 3 kinds built along these coasts is the masawa, the great seagoing vessel, a hollowed log built up with planks and lashed to its outrigger. Riding the swell with its stiff golden sail unrolled, and its prowboards carved and painted in black and white and red. To its owners, a masawa is no mere tool. It is a thing half alive, an object of pride and admiration, spun about with tradition and song, named like a person and spoken of by its name. Some 60 of these great canoes ride the beaches of the ring. Their very building belongs to the exchange. The felling of the first tree is reckoned the opening act of the whole performance, and no such canoe is ever made except in the service of the voyages that carry the shells across the sea, so the shape of it stands revealed. Two useless ornaments, passed hand to hand and island to island, never owned for long, never finally kept, circling for years through the fingers of thousands of men, who cannot see the circle they complete. Their worth lies nowhere in themselves, not in the shell, not in the polish, not in any use to which they might be put. It lies in the motion, in the giving, in the travelling, in the names and the histories that gather on them as they go. Here a thing becomes precious, not by being held, but by being released. Not by what it does, but by where it has been, and whose hands have passed it on. The invisible value that orders this world has found in the endless ring its perfect and visible form. Chapter 3. The Law of the Gift. On the beach of Kula, the new canoe stands finished, its hull dark with fresh stain, its prowboards carved and bright, and the whole district has come down to the sand to watch a single boat touch the water. 8 canoes lie drawn up at the lagoon's edge, and before them the food has been built into conical heaps, 1 heap for each canoe. Yams piled with their finest tubers, turned outward, hands of ripe bananas, and bunches of betel laid across the top. A man bends over a lump of red ochre, murmurs across it, and stains the mouth of the vessel at bow and stern. Then the canoe goes down into the water over transverse rollers of wood, pushed by many hands amid shouts and ululations. 1,000 people have gathered to see it float, and before anyone sails, before the trial run of the Tassasauria that is no true race, the heaped food is given away. This giving away is the heart of the day. The distribution repays the men who felled the tree and scooped the log, who lashed and caulked and painted. Above all, the master builder, summoned from Kitava, fed choice food through all the weeks of his labour, and now handed at the feast his hundreds of baskets of yams, his pig, his belt of red shell discs. Generosity stands here on open display, yet beneath the open hand lies an exact accounting. The feast is not bounty. It is a debt discharged. The wealth that fills these heaps has itself arrived as obligation. A chief's storehouses are stocked each harvest by the brothers of his wives, and across the whole island, men labour in gardens whose yield they will never eat. A man works for his sisters. The harvest of his plot travels down the road to the husband of his sister, to fill another man's yam house, while his own is filled in turn by some other man bound by the same rule. And the yams are made to be looked at. The storehouse is built with wide gaps between its beams, so that the quantity within can be gauged and its quality judged. The largest tubers are set to the outside, the giant varieties framed in wood and painted and hung upon the front, where a high chief resides. The commoners must close up their own stores with coconut leaf, lest their food seem to rival his. Over the filled houses, the magic of plenty, Villa Malia, is spoken. Yet it works not upon the yams, but upon the people who own them, dulling their appetite, turning them toward the wild fruit of the bush, so that the stored food sits untouched until half of it rots and is thrown onto the heap at the back of the houses to make room for the next harvest. A storehouse full to rotting is a man's triumph. To eat until one sickens is spoken of as a pleasure. So wealth is not held in order to be used. It is held in order to be shown and to be given. And the two are nearly one thing, for to accumulate is only to gather the means of giving, and to give is to rise. The man who releases the most stands highest. This is the quiet undoing of a familiar figure, the calculating man who labors only for gain, who keeps what he needs and parts with nothing except for profit. No such man walks these islands. Gain is no spur to work here. Offered as a wage, it fails, and the worker who seems idle for it will toil without rest under the pull of custom and the lure of renown. Order is held by no force, but every man's adhesion to what has always been done. Tradition is right, and what is right has might. Between the freely given and the nakedly bargained runs a long graded scale, and every act of exchange finds its place upon it. At one end lies the only gift that asks nothing in return, the gift of a father to his son. By the reckoning of blood, the father is a stranger to his own child, bound by no kinship at all. And for that very reason he gives freely what no rule compels. His valuables, his garden trees, even the knowledge of his magic. At the far end lies Gimwali, the open barter of the inland makers of wooden dishes and combs and lime pots, who hawk their goods from village to village and haggle without shame. This dish is worth 40 coconuts and some beetle. Bound to no partner, wrapped in no ceremony. To say of any dealing that it was done like a Gimwali is to insult it. Everything else is ordered between these poles, and each human tie carries its own fixed obligation. The harvest owed by a wife's brothers, the tribute carried upward to a chief, the payment pressed upon the sorcerer who is asked to kill or to heal, the food owed to those who blacken their faces in mourning, so that even the great distributions for the dead, the sagali, are at bottom a payment for grief performed, and no gift of any kind stands alone. Each summons its return, irregular in timing, often unequal in measure, but never to be escaped. One word, mapula, the repayment, runs through the whole of it. The strange circuit of shells belongs within this order, near its ceremonial end. A barter made noble, deferred across months, carried on between partners, joined for life, where the offered gift is always accepted and always, in its time, repaid, and never, ever haggled over. So the law beneath the useless valuables stands revealed, and it is not profit, it is the bond. To give is to bind another and to stand above him. To take is to fall into debt. Worth here is not the price a thing will fetch, but the tie it makes, the obligation it fastens, the renown it confers, the long memory of every hand that has let it pass. A shell ornament that no one can wear is worth a voyage across open water, because the voyage is the gift, and the gift is power. The law is settled here, on the sand, among the storehouses and the gardens and the heaped food drying in the sun. But the partners who must answer these gifts do not live within the safe green ring of the lagoon. They wait across the water, beyond the barrier reef, where the shallows give way to the deep, and the far mountains stand up out of the sea. Chapter 4. The Crossing. The sail fills, golden and stiff, and the green ring of the lagoon falls away behind the stern, until it is only a line on the water. Ahead, there is no land, only the open swell of the Pilolu, the sea arm that divides the flat coral islands from the dark mountains of the south, and across it the small canoes ride strung out, one behind another, their outriggers lifting and dropping, their crews crouched low. The shallows where every reef could be read have given way to a depth that holds nothing the eye can use. The fleet is bound for the amphlets, the grasping islanders who hold the trade of these waters in their hands, and for Dobu beyond them, and it sails as an uvalaku, the great competitive expedition in which each canoe strains to come home with the largest haul, and the honor of the voyage rides on the count of shells. By afternoon, when the wind is poor, the canoes put in at one of the low sandbanks that punctuate the passage. Legumatabu, Gabuwana, Yakum, bare scraps of white sand under a few scraggy pandanus, sheltered by a thread of reef. Fires are lit, yams are boiled, the eggs of seafowl gathered on the spot. And when darkness closes in and the flames draw the men into a ring, the talk turns, as it always turns on such nights, to the things that wait beneath the water. Here, far from the village, with the surf booming on the reef and the dry pandanus leaves rattling in the wind, belief comes easily that did not come so easily by daylight. The men speak of the giant Quita, the octopus said to be so vast it covers the whole Pilolu with its body, its arms thick as coconut palms, a creature that holds a canoe fast for days, until the starving crew adorn one of their boys with valuables and give him to the sea to buy their release. They speak of the live stones, the Nuwakekepaki of the Dobuan waters, and the Vinilida of the eastern seas, which lie in wait, leap from the surface, and chase a canoe down to smash it. And so laughter and loud voices are hushed, for noise draws them. They speak of Sinamata Nojinogi, the rain that strikes from above to break a foundering canoe apart. But of all the terrors named on the sandbank, the deepest is the flying witch, a woman of certain villages. Wawela on the eastern shore is full of them, is a Yoyova, and when her second self slips from her sleeping body and rises invisible through the night air, that flying thing is the Mulakwasi. At sea her name is not spoken. The sailors call her only Vivila, woman, lest the true word reach her and draw her down upon them. For the conviction runs to the bottom of every mariner that when a canoe is lost, it is not the wind or the reef that kills. It is the witches, gathered where men drown, who tear out the inside of a drowning man and hide it away. And the sharks, the gaping depth, the small biting things of the sea are theirs, acting at their command. Turn the witch aside by magic, and the drowning man swims free. Against her stands the Kaiga'u, the magic of mist, which a sailor counts beside his Kula magic and his canoe magic, as the third thing he cannot cross the sea without. The man who carries it well is held able to pass through the worst waters unharmed. Maradiana, whose father Maniua died on an expedition in Dobu, trusted his inherited Kaiga'u so far that he laid the corpse in his own canoe, the one burden certain to draw every witch in the sea, and carried it home to Boyoa without mishap, and the deed is told to this day. The magic works in two directions. There is the spell of the underneath, murmured over stones and lime, to close the gaping depth and blind the sharks and the leaping stones below. And there is the spell of the above, longer and graver, spoken against the witches themselves. Both raise a mist. It settles over the foundering canoe and over the men clinging to its wreckage, and it darkens the eyes of everything that hunts them, so that they see only fog where their prey should be. So the old men tell, over the fire, the whole shape of a wreck, as though each had lived through it. The wind booms and the sail tears away. The witches scream in the gale. The canoe swamps and the outrigger float is cut loose for the men to cling to. The master of the canoe calls upon the great fish, the Iraviaka, which rises beneath them, takes the float upon its back, and carries them toward a shore. And even landed, they are not safe. They creep up the beach in silence, wipe out their footprints, tangle the path behind them, and hide in the smoke of a fire until the salt is gone from their skins and the witches can no longer smell them. No one now living has been wrecked in just this way, the tale belongs to no single knight, but to all of them, a pattern of what the sea does, and of what a man must do to come back from it. This is what lies beneath the exchange of two useless shells. To answer a gift laid on the sand, men leave the safe green water and commit their small craft to a sea they believe is ruled by witches and living stones and a hunger in the deep. And they trust their return not to the strength of the hull, but to a few words spoken over ginger and lime. The crossing strips the Kula of any likeness to a marketplace. It is a passage into mortal danger, taken up willingly, and the thing that carries a man through it is not his timber, but his conviction that the right word, correctly uttered, can blind death itself. Out on the black water, the fleet hangs suspended over the depth, held up as much by belief as by the wood beneath it. Chapter 5. The Charter of Myth. Once, a canoe flew. It lifted from the lagoon under its own magic and went through the air over the reefs and the open water, swifter than any sail, and came down on a far beach while the men who launched it were still singing. This is not told as a wonder or a lie. It is told as a thing that happened in a named place to a named people. The clan of Kudayuri, whose sisters carried the hull into the sky. And the proof of it lies on every beach in these islands, for the canoes drawn up there now are still fast, and that speed is the same magic, only worn thin. The flight was the whole of the power. What remains is a fragment. Had the spell come down entire, a hull pushed off the sand this morning would rise and fly as that one did. So magic is the living evidence of the myth. The old story makes a claim, and the words muttered over a prow, each season, make the claim good. In a smaller measure, but in the same kind, where the spell still works. The story must be true, and the two hold each other up. And the heroes of those stories are no gods set far above the people. They are grandfathers. Tokosi Kuna, Kasabwe Boireta, the man who first flew, the man who was made beautiful. Each belonged to a clan and a sub-clan that living men still belong to, lived in a village that still stands and can be claimed by his descendants as their own direct ancestor. The myth is owned, the way a garden or a song is owned. A sub-clan holds it, knows it best, keeps it pure in its home place, because the magic that goes with the story is kept there too. And a man cannot work the one without holding the other. What the ancestors did is simply how the thing is done. The story is the law, and the law is pressed into the land itself. The route south is lined with proof. There are sea passages pierced clean through the rock. Boulders split as though by a hand, and human beings standing in the surf who are no longer flesh but stone, past the island of Tawara, the mythical center of these waters. The fleet bears towards Sanaroa, and at the northern end of the long white beach of Seruboina, two black rocks rise from the shallows. They were brothers once, Atuain and Aturamoa, who came from the north with their sister, until she lost her comb and stayed behind in a tidal creek among the mangroves, turning to stone as Sinastemubadiei. The brothers went on a little further and stopped there forever. One of them turned his face to the open sea, and the islanders call him the Good One. The other turned toward the bush, toward the eating of men, and in that frozen choice, the people read the reason that those across the water are not as they are. As the canoes pass, an offering is laid upon the stone, a scrap of coconut, a stale yam, a piece of sugarcane, and banana, with a quiet word asking the old man for luck and for a swift Kula at the far shore. The story gives the rock its meaning. The rock gives the story its weight, fixing it in something that will not move. On that same beach, the fleet halts, and the men begin to make themselves into the likeness of the heroes. They moor the canoes and open their baskets. They wash in the sea and rub their skins with charmed leaves. They break coconuts and grease their bodies to a shine. They comb out their hair, draw red lines across their faces with crushed beetle and lime, and black lines with a sweet-smelling resin, and tuck a fragrant herb. Charmed at home, and carried all this way into their armlets. Over each thing, as it is taken up, a spell is spoken. The Mwasila, the magic of beauty. It is the same magic that in the old story took an ugly, ungainly man and made him a radiant youth no partner could refuse. Its whole purpose is to make the man beautiful, attractive, irresistible, so that the partner, looking upon his face, will press the valuable into his hands, and the belief itself half achieves it. A man who knows he is beautiful carries himself like a man who cannot be refused. And in this exchange, it is the bearing of the one who asks that moves the one who gives. So the past is not behind these people. It stands in the rock at the head of the beach. It lives in the spell handed down from a grandfather who once flew, and now it sits in the painted shining face of the man who has remade himself in a hero's image before he steps ashore. The strange, perilous, useless crossing is not a thing they merely choose. It was done first by the ancestors. It is sealed into the coastline, and it is carried in the body of every adventurer who paints himself for the meeting. Below the partner's island, the fleet draws in, charmed and gleaming, each man wearing his myth, and ready at last to be seen. Chapter 6. The Power of the Word. The fleet comes in over the green water in a long double line. The canoes that cross the deep now gliding shallow above their own shadows. Punting poles dipping where the lagoon runs too thin for the paddle. Conch shells lift their single notes one after another down the row. And beneath that sound runs another, lower and unbroken. The murmur of spells rising from every hull at once, as the painted prows draw in toward the palm grove, and the crowd thickening on the sand. Within 20 meters of the shore, the boats wheel into formation. 2 ranks abreast, the leader's canoe on the left flank of the first row, and in that canoe, a man rises to his feet. His voice carries across the water to the people waiting on the beach. He asks, in the tongue of the far shore, who will be first in the Kula? These who have come, or the men of the island left behind? He answers his own challenge. The lead will be theirs. Let them bring armshells, a basketful, 2 baskets. Let them catch pigs, pluck coconuts and beetle. For this is his expedition, and in another season, the debt will turn, and the valuables will come back the other way. The partner he names wades out through the shallows with a pair of armshells in either hand. Behind him, a small boy walks blowing a conch. Behind the boy, 2 men carry a pole across their shoulders, hung with white armshells that swing as they go. At the canoe, the man lays his gift on the platform and names it for what it is. A vaga, an opening gift. The first half of a thing that will not be whole for years. In its own time, he says, a great necklace must come back to clinch it. The kudu, the equivalent, the answering shell that closes what is opened here. Then his eldest wife comes down to the water with a basket on her head. And in the basket, where 80 armshells might lie, there rests a single ceremonial pair, the gift made small in number and vast in show. After that, the conches sound on every side. Men detach themselves from the rest, singly and in groups, wading out with armshells held high on sticks or in the open hand. And for half an hour, the setting sun pours its glowing light over the painted hulls. The yellow beach, the bronze figures moving on it. For 3 days, the visitors remain. There is no marketplace here, no haggling, no price asked. A man never deals with his own partner, but only gives to him, and is given to in turn. The gift always accepted, always in its season repaid. Where a partner holds back, a smaller gift, a basi, is pressed into his hand, to bind him to the promise and keep the prized valuable from drifting towards some other man. And each time a pair of armshells passes from a visitor to a host, a conch is lifted and blown, so that the air above the 7 villages is marked again and again by the one note that means a thing has changed hands. What moves a reluctant partner is not the bargain, for there is none. It is the word. Before the meeting, the visitor has charmed himself beautiful and charmed his partner's heart soft. And the spell he has murmured, the morsila, is believed to do the work itself, to soften, to persuade, to draw the shell out of another man's keeping and into his own. And this is no isolated charm. Across these islands, almost nothing of weight is attempted without its magic. A child is brought into the world with magic to make it prosper. Love has its long and elaborate spells, to which men credit every conquest. The gardener mutters over his seed and his soil, and the dancer over his painted body. The chiefs of Omaracana hold the magic of rain and sun, and by withholding the rain, they have bent whole districts to their will. There is magic for the wind a sailor needs, and for the fish a village hunts. Magic for war that makes the spear find its mark, and the shield turn it aside. Magic to still the toothache, to make stored food last, to lay a curse on the fruit of a tree too far off to guard. The spell is never an ornament running alongside the labor. It is held to be the cause, the thing that makes the difference a man cannot explain by soil or skill or luck. Look closely at any one of these rites, and the same shape appears. There is an act, and there are words, and there is the man entitled to speak them. But of the three, the word is everything. When magic is passed from one man to another, it is only the spell that must be taught. The gestures are common knowledge, plain to anyone watching. Ask where the true strength of the magic lies, and the answer is always the same: in the spell. Some spells are cast straight into the open, the magician sending his voice out across the sea or up at the mountain. Others are breathed into a thing held close, the words rubbed into a leaf or a blade, and then folded shut, the voice sealed in around the object, so its virtue cannot leak away. Either way, it is the voice that carries the force. For the force is housed in the body of the man himself. The mind sits in the throat, where the spells are learned, but the great store of formulae sinks lower, settling in the belly, where a lifetime of magic is kept. An old war magician asked whether his store was spent, struck his stomach, and laughed that there was plenty more lying down there yet. The power does not live in the shell, or the canoe, or the wind. It lives inside a man, and it escapes only through his voice, nor is it begged from spirits or gods. The ancestors stand near, and may be fed and invited, but they do not carry the canoe. They are companions, not servants. The magic is man's own, his inherited, irreducible power over the things that matter to him. So when the fleet first ran in toward this beach, 3 reciters in each canoe were chanting the spell that shakes the mountain, hurling the words at the far coast to make the partner's island tremble and the hearts upon it open. The whole edifice stands on that conviction, the useless shells, the crossing through the witch-haunted sea, the partnerships that bind a man for life. All of it rests on a single human faith that a word, correctly uttered, can command the world. The valuables move because men believe the spell moved them. The canoe flies because the formula is held to lift it. The partner yields because the charm is thought to have softened him. Strip the belief away, and nothing turns. At the center of this great circuit of treasures, there is no engine of timber or muscle or gain, only the spoken word and the certainty running to the bottom of every mind here that the word is enough. Chapter 7. The ring closes. Along a path that runs between two green walls of bush, a pair of white armshells travels overland. No sail carries them now, no open water. Only a man walking up from the beach with the shells threaded on a stick across his shoulder, and ahead of him a small boy lifting a conch to his lips. The single note carries over the gardens to Omaracana, where the chief Ta'ulua sits on the platform before one of his wives' houses and waits. He has crossed a narrow sea from Kitava with a haul of armshells, and word has gone ahead of him. Today the valuables will move again, not over the deep, but from hand to hand among neighbors, along the roads of a single island. For the great exchange runs on land as surely as it runs on water. Here in the heart of the largest island, the circuit gathers, for once, into a single pair of hands. To Omaracana, the men of the surrounding villages bring their finest necklaces. The long red soliver carried on a stick, its heavy pendant taken off and borne apart on a wooden dish, and each is laid before the chief as a vaga. An opening gift, the stick thrust into the thatch of his house. The headman of Wagaluma comes in just this way and names his gift with a studied contempt, calling the great necklace a mere scrap of food left over, an unwanted thing, and asking in the same breath whether the chief has perhaps no armshells to answer it. The insult is part of the giving. Beneath it, the man is boasting of all the wealth he still holds and goading the chief to match him. The answer comes at once. A fine pair of armshells handed across. The yotl, the gift that clinches what the necklace opened. To a chief, the opening gift is always brought and never by him given. He may owe a valuable to a commoner, but no commoner ever owes one to him. Through 2 days, the conch sounds on every side as the armshells fanned out from Kitava pass on through the district. Yet, however they scatter and change hands here, the great outer current is scarcely troubled. This inland passage is only an eddy at the edge of a far larger flow, and that blood flow runs round a ring no single island can see whole. The necklaces move one way about it, the armshells the other, and each community keeps to its own stretch of the round. Boyawa and Kitava, the small eastern islands of Iwa and Gawa and Kwayawata. Woodlark, that its own people call Murua. And away to the south, through the Amphlets to Dobu, at certain narrows, the whole stream is forced through a single gate. Every valuable crossing between east and west must pass through Kitava, so that on that one small island, the shells lie 20 times as thick for its few hundred people as among the 10,000 of the Trobrians. Far to the south, the strands gather again at Tubetub, the trading island through which the southern current runs, followed out patiently the two branches that leave the Trobrians, one bending south toward Dobu, one bending east toward Woodlark, run on through island after island until they curve back and meet, and the ring is closed. Around its edges lie stranger waters still, the Loftlands, where a valuable goes in and returns the way it came, a small eddy in the onward current. Missima and Wari and Panayati, threaded on the wider loop. Once launched upon this round, a valuable never truly comes to rest. Even death only quickens it. In the eastern islands, when a man dies, a taboo falls on his village, and the shells are held back, damned where they lie, until at the great mortuary feast called the Soi they are released all at once, in a sudden wave that travels far along the circuit. The very rush of armshells the Dobuans once carried home was the ripple of such a feast held under the full moon at Yanabwa on Woodlark, and the dying themselves are heaped with valuables, borrowed from every kinsman for the occasion and taken back when it is over, while a man's own shells lie on his body only for a time before they too are loosed again into the stream. Nothing here is finely kept. To hold a valuable is never more than to keep it in trust for a while. This is why it can never be mistaken for money. The shells measure no prices and buy no goods. They are no medium of exchange and no standard of worth. Each has one purpose only: to circulate, to be owned for a season and given on, to gather names and histories as it goes. The figure of a calculating creature who labors only for the most gain at the least cost has no place on this round. He is a phantom that the whole circuit dispels. These are not coins, but something nearer to objects of cult, offered up to the spirits at the feast of Milamala, set before a malignant spirit to soften its mind, pressed upon the body of the dying as the one sure comfort. They are condensed wealth, handled with reverence, treasured as the reservoir of all good. So the ring stands revealed at last in its whole shape, one vast closed circuit, binding many islands and many tongues, turning without end, the shells outliving every hand that has held them. And it answers the question that has run beneath all of it: Worth was never in the object, not in the shell, not in its polish, not in any use. It lies in the motion, in the giving, in the obligation a thing fastens and the long memory it carries, and the believed word that drives it on. The deepest reward of grasping such a thing is not the curiosity of a strange custom. Every people is given by its own world a particular vision of life, and to look for a moment through eyes not its own is the only way a mind is ever enlarged. The oldest wisdom, the knowledge of oneself, cannot be reached from inside the narrow round of a single people's habits and beliefs. It is won only by entering, with reverence, the outlook of another. In the worn red shell and the white armband passing forever from hand to hand, a distant people teaches what value is, and what it is to see the world from within another life. And yet the ring turns now in a failing light. To'ulua is the last chief of Kirawina. After him, the line will not be filled. Even among the islanders, the fear is spoken that within a generation or two, the whole circuit may fall still. The world that raised this turning ring is passing, and the way of seeing that it carried may pass with it. And whether the meaning of such a world will be understood before it is gone remains like the ring itself, unclosed. The script was based on the book Argonauts of the Western Pacific, an account of native enterprise and adventure in the archipelagos of Melanesian New Guinea, authored by Bronisław Malinowski and first published in 1922. Thank you for watching. Until the next journey begins,